Yes, I move to approve the City of San Clemente minutes of the regular meeting of Design Review Subcommittee of December 23rd, 2020, as submitted.
And I will second it. And in favor, Jen?
Aye.
And I also, an aye, so passes 201. We have the next item is architectural review of the following items. We have site plan permit, cultural heritage permit, 2135 and 2134, 1409 South El Camino Real Shoreline Dental. Katie Crockett is the staff member presenting it, and you have the floor, Katie.
Thank you, Commissioner Crandall. Good afternoon. I do have a presentation, so I'll give IT just a second to bring that up. This project is a renovation and addition to a one-story commercial building, resulting in a, oh, I'm sorry, completely wrong project. Planning ahead here. So this is the second review of the Shoreline Dental project. It involves the demolition of the Tommy's restaurant building, which we did have reviewed by our historic consultant following design review subcommittee last time. This was previously reviewed by the design review subcommittee in September. Next slide. The project site is right at the a southbound freeway exit, number 74, at the corner of El Camino Real and Avenida Valencia. So the project is, let's see, next slide. So there you see the original building. There was some question, both from this design review subcommittee as well as from the Historic Society, as to whether this building, which was constructed in 1963, could potentially be considered for inclusion on our list of historic resources. After review, our consultant did recommend some modifications of the applicant's study to include some additional background information, just to be sure all of the information that we needed was included in order to make that conclusion. Ultimately, our consultant did concur with the applicant's historic consultant that this project is not necessarily eligible for inclusion based on any of the criteria, either for the city of San Clemente or the federal government. Next slide. So the new project is an approximately 6,000 square foot, two-story office building. We have already reviewed this, but the applicant has made several changes in response to the design review subcommittee's recommendations at the last meeting, and those are summarized in your report. It's Shoreline Dental will be located on the first floor. They're currently located in downtown on Avenida Cabrillo on the first floor. They'll be located on the first floor, and the general office, which is to be determined, would be located on the second floor. At the last DRSC meeting, the recommendations did involve primarily building design updates as well as modifications to the landscape plan. Next slide. At the last meeting, there was some confusion regarding the status of the easement at the north side, which is on the left side of the slide, and the north side of the project site. The property line and easement area is now correctly shown on the site plan, and the owner of the property on which this property has an easement for parking has consented in writing to the proposed modifications. If the project is approved, an updated easement agreement would be required as a condition of project approval. The DRC also recommended modifications to the landscape plan, in particular, reconsidering the use of holly oak trees spaced so closely to the sidewalk and to each other due to the expected mature canopy of that tree. Australian willow has been substituted, which is about a 20-foot mature canopy, which is significantly less than what was originally proposed. The DRSC also mentioned modifying the parking layout such that some landscape screening could be provided for that retaining wall on site that abuts those parking spaces. While the retaining wall will be finished with smooth white stucco to match the building, the applicant said they were unable to meet the parking and circulation minimum dimensions if that landscape screening were incorporated. The large landscape area in the center is required for stormwater retention according to their WQMP. So they cannot kind of take some of that landscape area and just move it over. Next slide. The applicants have endeavored to incorporate the DRSC's comments. They did remove the glass railing at the second floor deck. They modified the tower element and reworked the arcade at the first floor, including aligning those windows and doors with the arches. Additionally, you'll notice that windows and doors are significantly more inset to create depth and shadow consistent with Spanish colonial revival design guidelines. Next slide. So these two elevations show the rear and side, which abut the freeway exit ramp. On these elevations, take note of the windows as they have been modified to be vertical openings as opposed to horizontal. And again, they have more depth than the original design that DRSC reviewed. Next slide. So staff does still recommend simplification of the tower element. The architect had concerns in removing that column detail that you see here on the left that's on the plans. Just because the tower then maybe looks a little too plain. To illustrate how it might look if they did remove that column detail, the architect put together these mock-ups for the DRSC's consideration as you do consider staff's recommendation that the column detail on that tower be removed. Let's see. Staff does believe that the simplified tower is more consistent with the SCR architecture. So that would be what you see in the two pictures to the right. And the concern of plainness can potentially be addressed with some other simple details, but we'll be looking for commissioner feedback on that. Next slide. The architect checked the spacing of the Raptor tails on the tower, and they are consistent with the guidelines. However, they did provide this alternative Raptor tail design for DRSC's consideration as well. Next slide. So in addition to those tower modifications, staff recommends modification to the arcade to be covered. This is to address concerns regarding bird nuisance that the DRSC brought up during prior review. Not necessarily because the design guidelines say it should be covered. And also the site lighting plan needs to be modified to comply with the code. Staff did receive one written comment in support of the project, which was sent to you by email, and I can read that during the public comment portion of this item. And next slide. Finally, the applicant and the shoreline team are here today, which I think we've been introduced to Corey Ritzau, who's the applicant, and as well as the applicants, as well as the architects. So that concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have. That's it.
Okay, either the project team or the applicant, would you like to make any comments prior to questions being thrown out?
Yes, please. Yeah, hi. Just wanted to give you an update on what's transpired since the last time that we had a meeting. We went and we were requested by the city to look at a number of gateway buildings in Subcommittee, including the Chick-fil-A building, the Starbucks building, the Valero, and the bicycle shop. And we went and extensively reviewed these buildings and found that the Starbucks building most closely matched us in in spacing and massing and size and design. So we took a few cues from the Starbucks as well as the Valero in the redesign of the facade of this building. Specifically, the tower element was a design that was closely resembles one of the Starbucks building, as well as the Raptor tail spacing is also a close association with the Starbucks. The one feature that we're wanting to keep with on this building is the separated arcade, because we feel it's one of the original design concepts of this project. And to keep that, what we did was we removed the front one on the actual street frontage of the building, because there was a problem with the feel of the entrance off of the main right of way. In doing so, we simplified the front.
Right. So we feel
elevation.
that the putting the roof back would just revert back to the original design that the design committee did not like. We prefer this design. I think their concern was birds or something like that. We don't have a concern with birds. They might have mentioned maintenance or upkeep too. Again, we'll design the details to be as maintenance free as possible with those exposed trellis elements. They're all over the city. I don't see a problem with them. So we would like not to do the enclosed roof over on our arcade portion. We feel that that's against the design intent of the project. It's not a design review issue in terms of the local ordinance for mission style architecture. In fact, we think it more closely follows that. It's a very nice, interesting look. And so that's what we'd like to keep. Regarding the tower element, we still feel that first elevation that we presented is better with the columns on it, simply because the level of detail matches the rest of the level of detail around the rest of the building. So if we oversimplify that tower, it kind of stands out as an oversimplified element among the others. So that's really our comments.
Yeah, we were having a major proportion issue with the design of that, to simplify that tower, because the window in the center is so large so that we can get light into the second floor. The columns really provide a great anchorage on the sides of that window. While the simplicity, it ends up looking like the window's oversized, and I would need to dramatically resize that window, and it dramatically reduces the daylighting inside the building as well.
And again, it spoils the look from the outside.
Sorry, we got into details. We're supposed to be giving a general info there, but anyway, there we go.
If I may briefly address the other issue relating to the landscaping up against the retaining wall. There is a requirement to have a certain depth of parking stall there. As Katie pointed out, we can't really accommodate that because it would mean pushing the parking further back into the site and then losing the required amount of space we need for drainage. We're really down to the square inch on that one. I think that about covers our architectural concerns. As far as lighting is concerned, I think it's only a note about having a baffle on one or two lights. So there's nothing really concerning the lighting. The lighting conforms.
Okay, thank you very much. Jen or Michael, do you have any questions for the applicant or Katie?
I have a quick question at this moment regarding the Raptor tail design for the tower. The presentation shows an alternate design, but in the package I'm looking at the rendering, there doesn't seem to be a Raptor tail there. It seems like a soffit, and the rendering shows a pretty flat. It doesn't look like a Raptor tail. I'm not sure.
That is correct.
That's correct. Yeah, not your Raptor tail detail is for a sloped eaves, and we don't really have that same condition. So it's not a one size fits all Unfortunately, your detail is a one size fits all, and this is a different design. Going back to the Starbucks building, for example, it's very, very similar to that. So you have allowed that particular look elsewhere in numerous other locations. I think that the rafter tail exhibit that comes with your rafter tail document, this one, it's a little bit too limited. It needs to be expanded. But we do basically conform with all the requirements.
We're very close to the conformance of the rafter tails. We again, Starbucks ended up being 24 inches on center with 2x4s against the bottom of their soffit, and we matched that, except we're using a 4x4 instead.
So nice, heavy,
but we're
heavy
still
looking.
24 inches on center, so it is wider than the rafter tail exhibit. But again,
I'm referring to this. Your rendering
the background is getting in the way.
On sheet A-3.4. If you look at the rendering at the bottom right corner on sheet A-3.4, it appears to be a flat soffit without a rafter tail. Can you confirm that?
I don't think that's the case. It is a flat soffit, but it does have rafter tails.
On 3.4, I'm sorry, which elevation are you looking at on 3.4?
You won't see it if you're looking down on the building.
The bottom right rendering, looking up toward the eave. There's a soffit underneath the eave.
Yes. So that is a flat. That is, you're absolutely correct. That is a flat soffit with a rafter tail attachment to the bottom.
Correct.
That is the one that's similar to the Starbucks design.
Regardless of Starbucks design, on the rendering, I don't see the rafter tail. I see a flat surface. Is that the case?
No. The rafter tails are the little brown lines.
Yeah. It may not show up in the rendering, but it's definitely a tail there.
Okay. Well, you don't have it in your detail sheet either. So, do you have a profile of a rafter tail? We can look at it.
Well, it's in this case, it's a 2x4 attached to the face mounted to the bottom of a soffit.
Is it more
So it's just a flat 2x4?
That is correct. Yes. But what we can do is we can do a modification to that. And Katie showed that at the end of her presentation. We could do a 4x6 instead and do an actual rafter tail design and provide much more detail in that. I don't know, Katie, is there any way that you could bring that up again?
I can't. I don't know if IT is able to do that. I think it was slide 9 in my presentation. So I'm not entirely sure, but oh, here it comes. Great. Thank you, Tara.
Yeah, our only issue is that we don't want to go any closer with the design because there you go. That's perfect.
Okay.
So what we were thinking is we would replace the flat 2x4 design because it does, I agree with Katie, it does look like it's a little bit wider spacing. But I think if we gave it more depth and put a little bit more design into that rafter tail, we could still keep with our original design intent and provide that, meet that requirement.
It's a heavier member.
Okay, I'm clear on that. Another question is on your lighting design. You showed us two lighting fixtures and they look quite similar. Can you tell me which one is for the lighting pole and which one is for the wall?
Which one goes on a pole and which is for the wall?
I'm trying to see what the call is.
It's
on your lighting plan. There are type A and a type B.
Yes, So type A is the pole in the lot in the parking lot, and type B is the face mount on the building.
Yeah. But we go to sheet E 1.1. Which one is type A? Which one is type B?
Oh,
Make that smaller.
yeah. So type A is the first one, and then type B is the second one. The top one is type A. The bottom one is type B.
Okay. Have you put the lighting fixture on the elevation to see how they look?
I believe we have. Let's see.
The type B itself is 3 feet tall. It's big lighting fixtures.
Yeah, yeah. So if you see on the front, on El Camino Real side of the building on 3.4, the upper right, we have them shown, and on the arcade just below it, we have them shown
On the corners.
on the edges.
Okay.
And then in the bottom right, next to the door, the exit door of that stairwell, we have one shown there.
That's on the back side.
Well, you do have them shown, but on your lighting exhibit, you have indicated that you want 11 posts and the 17 type B. I don't see 17 there. On the plan, I only counted 11, and if you look at the rendering, they're even less. How many lighting fixtures are you proposing?
It's going to match the photometric.
So there's no exhibit of it?
Yeah, there is.
No, I mean on your renderings?
No, not on the renderings. That didn't get coordinated.
Not yet.
Did you have a chance to coordinate the lighting plan and a landscape plan?
Yes, coordinate lighting with landscape. I don't believe the landscape shows the lighting.
The lighting posts and the trees, do you have a chance to coordinate them?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that.
What's
Do
the
you
question?
do you have a chance to coordinate between lighting plan and a landscape plan, so that they don't block each other?
Oh yes, the lighting, the landscape got a copy of the photometric, so I'm assuming that they designed per the photometric plan. It's just the renderings didn't get those lights picked up around the building. They also aren't shown in the parking lot either.
Okay. The city wants your light to be shielded or recessed. So as a proposed condition 3 suggests, so that no direct glare or reflections are outside of your parcel, whether to the adjacent property or to public right of way.
Can we refer you back to the photometric?
Yes.
So you'll
So
see
that's,
at the perimeter of the property, you'll see where the lighting levels, virtually nothing.
10-foot candles is a lot.
yeah. So that's why this was one of my recommendations, that you take a look at the city's requirements, because right now the photometric doesn't meet the city's requirements. And so it sounds like, Commissioner Wu, it sounds like you have the same desire for an updated photometric.
Well, on the sidewalk, there are 7 or up to 9-foot candles. They're pretty bright, and you can choose to illuminate your parking lot as bright as you want. I think in general, there are minimum standard which you meet, but the lighting, we don't want the light to leak onto neighboring property and the public right of way. So it needs to be shielded. Your photometric exhibit, I'd like to see a light distribution pattern. Typically, it's a vertical distribution and horizontal distribution. So when you go to Planning Commission, I'd like to see that exhibit.
Okay.
And make
Yeah, we
sure your
can do an
lighting fixture,
updated.
yeah, and have your lighting consultant to make sure that it's shielded and the light outside of your parcel is not too bright.
Yes, we can do that. Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
How do
Commissioner Blackwell?
Yes, thank you. Well, I'm happy to see this project has come a long way since last time we discussed it, and I'm happy to see that lots of the comments that the DRSC had were implemented. The arcade, the removal of the front the fascia that was part of the original design and leaving just the one side, I think is a huge improvement. Commissioner Crandall had a concern about the arches lining up, and it looks 100% better now that it lines up. I do like the rafter, the more ornate rafter tail end. I like the exposed Raptors. They do look a little closer, but yeah, that's accurate. They're consistent with other projects that have been recently approved in the city, and I think it'll look nice, especially if it's got a nice finished end instead of just a square end. And I do like the open Raptors without a covering. I think that looks great. But Katie, I had a question about that piece of it. Why would staff, was it strictly just to avoid any potential bird litter by having?
It was just a follow-up on the commission's concern at the last meeting.
Okay, good. So that came from the DRSC. Okay. There's a call out to remove a Phoenix palm at the rear of the property on the east side of the property, but there was no call out to remove a Mexican fan palm that's there next to it. I'm assuming that's going to be removed because it's not shown in the
that is correct. Yes, it will be.
Okay, great. And Katie, is there any discussion with Public Works about doing anything with the sidewalk?
Yes, we are still in discussions with Public Works on that. Staff had initially recommended the paving treatment that's called for in the design standards, but apparently at some point the City Council had directed the Public Works Director to not use those not use that treatment outside of the downtown area. So we're still trying to get that sorted out, and we will have it sorted out by the time this comes to public hearing.
One of
Okay.
the most recent directions, we show that on A0.1 as
Yeah, so that's behind the scenes, Katie, that you guys are working out.
we'll do whatever you
Yes,
need.
indeed. And
Okay.
so we'll
You let
just,
us know what you need, we'll take care of it.
yeah, I saw that you included it, and so we will just have a condition to exclude it if Public Works needs us to do that.
Fantastic.
Okay. There's another project down at Avenida Santiago in El Camino Real, where I believe the sidewalks were left gray. That's a new development. And so it's kind of hit and miss sometimes. I just wanted to have clarification on that because that's a big part of the aesthetic, and would be a fan of staying consistent with what you said, Katie, about maybe keeping it closer to the downtown area and just going what we had recently done with the other project on Santiago, just doing it gray, making it gray. It does fade after a while and it doesn't look that great in my opinion. Okay, and then the other question I have is, and forgive me, I don't remember seeing a size on the new Mexican fan palm that's being introduced at the south side of the property. There's going to be a new one installed. The others are upwards of 80 feet plus, right? And we're putting in a new one. What size is intended there? Maybe that's for the architect.
Yeah, the landscape architect will have to look at that. Hold on a second.
Let's see if they mentioned.
Doesn't it? It says it's a 20-foot brown trunk height, so a little taller than 20 feet.
20 feet. I'm sorry, I missed that detail. Okay. Okay, so a young one. And there's another existing and Palm at the southwest corner, just adjacent corner of the property. It's on on city property, I believe. That one has not been maintained very well. I mean, it's all kind of part of the continuity and flow of the frontage of this property. It all kind of works together. Is there anything we can do about that?
So that one is actually in the Caltrans right of way, if I'm understanding your direction correctly. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah. It was public-
And
Yeah.
we have been in discussions with Caltrans on what can possibly be done with that kind of entire corner of landscape, as all of that has been in disrepair for some time.
Yeah. Okay, so we're in discussions with Caltrans about that. Is there anything that that we can do here in terms of maintenance? Because it does appear to be kind of part of the palette of landscaping along the frontage of the only use that's there, and that's going to be this one. Hopefully, if things work out, we'll have a new use there, and there's going to be a maintenance piece associated with that. Is there a way that we can sort of tie in some sort of maintenance on that tree through some sort of an agreement? Maybe that's a legal question.
I can see what we can do on that. We can't require the property owner to do it if Caltrans doesn't agree to that. And so I can definitely, that has been part of our discussion with Caltrans, either Caltrans doing the, I'm really sorry, either Caltrans doing the maintenance or repair, and then the maintenance throughout the life of that landscape area, or if we can get permission to allow it to be maintained by someone else.
And
But
Katie,
either way, we need Caltrans permission.
this is Corey, the property owner. Hey, I deal with that at
It's
home as
cute.
well, so I totally get it.
Yeah, we've been warned off anything to do with Caltrans. We tried to take over the corner and landscape that, but they wouldn't let us. So anything Caltrans property would be outside of the scope of this project.
Okay.
And-
Well, and I appreciate that. It's a different discussion. I'm actually working with Caltrans on a number of projects right now. And yeah, it's difficult to get anything done unless you're working with them on a specific project that they're budgeted for.
Yeah, and Commissioner Blackwell, this is Corey, the property owner, and we actually would love to be able to, to do that. I think that it would reflect well on our property and our project, but obviously we don't want to overstep our bounds. So if there's negotiation that can be had, that Katie can intercede on our behalf to make that happen, I would love nothing more than to clean that corner up myself.
Okay. It gets into some tricky territory only because if you would start maintaining it, it's almost like you start to develop a prescriptive right over that property, and you would have to agree to not try to claim that property as your own.
Got it. Yeah, that's all over my head, but I think we have the same desire.
Okay, well, hopefully we can do something there. Anyway, I didn't want to get into weeds too much. I just wanted to focus on that tree because it really does look like it's going to be part of your, the whole package there. And it's unfortunate that that one tree can't be maintained like the others have been. Okay, let's see. Sidewalk. Okay, another question. There's an easement described in parcel 2 in the title report, and it's described, and Katie, you shared with us that there would be access granted by the neighboring property owner. It's described as an easement. It appears to be just an access easement. It does detail 5 spaces in the drawings. It shows 7. But it looks like that entire piece is going to be allocated for access easements. So whether it's 8, 10, or 3 parking stalls, it doesn't really matter. But it does show 5 stalls in the report. I'm wondering about future, not to get too much into land use stuff, but aesthetics plays in here. because right now we've got some trees, we've got a visual piece of parking lot, which is always a point of focus and concern for us, that could at some point change should the other property owner decide they want to do something else, or maybe there's a reciprocation in mind should that other property develop and it would continue to operate as, and function as a parking area. Do you have any insight on that? I guess that'd be Katie or the property owner even that secured the easement. I don't know.
From what I understand, the owner of that property, it was hard to get in touch with them to get the letter that was included in your packet. We are aware that the number of parking spaces is different. That's why an updated easement would be required, as I mentioned. But we did want to make sure we had a tentative okay before the city moved forward with a public hearing. But I don't have any way of knowing what future plans for that property would be. I'm not sure if the applicant does, but I would presume not.
I'm going to try to speak on behalf of my neighbor, which is always dangerous, but it did not sound like there was anything consequential in development of that property, and that the owner is content to just sort of sit on it for a while. So there's nothing imminent in terms of its development. There had been discussions with us about potentially trying to acquire the property, but that's all I can say with, in terms of the brief conversations that I had with him.
Okay. And, as it relates in this discussion, the relative issues would be, the trees, and we're talking about, required landscape area. We're talking about, a visual component aside, beyond the trees, you've got parking stalls and such. So I guess the concern, and maybe this would be a discussion that might be refined more by the time it gets to planning commission, but that would be a concern that I would have, because, if we've got parking requirements, just something to think about, we've got parking requirements and we're using those 5, 7 or whatever stalls we end up with as part of that count, and the adjacent property owner decides to develop and utilize that portion of the property for something else. Now, there's an encumbrance on you that is going to be, it's a problem, because when we're talking about land use entitlements, that we expect it to run with the life of the land.
Michael, the city attorney, anytime we have parking agreements, writes it such that their approval is dependent on that being permanent. And it just can't be taken, it's not supposed to be taken away, because all of a sudden the conditional use permit is null and void if those parking spaces disappear. So it's going to have to be written such that it is permanent, and at the adjacent landowner's discretion, it cannot be taken away.
Okay, thank you, Bart. I think that's a very important point. And again, the trees that are identified there are part of the landscape plan. I would hope that there'd be some protections put in place for that as well. Okay, but okay, and finally, the tower. I appreciated the alternatives that the applicant provided. I share staff's concern about simplicity. However, in this case, I think more detail would work. To the applicant's point, the continuity and details. I like the column design. I like the middle alternative depicted a sort of a tile inset around the window. I like that too. I think that was very nice. It's less simple with all of those things, but I think for an element that large on the property, it's going to be more significant, probably the most significant element of the architecture. I think it is going to be nice. So I'd like to see more detail. Those Raptor tails are not square, and so it's another opportunity for continuity around the other side of the property. So I think that could all work together pretty well. That's all. That's the only comment I had on that.
Okay, Michael and Jen, follow along, and if you have questions while I'm kind of relating this, jump in. Looking at the parking lot, I'm going to start there with site plan. The parking in front of the building itself in that wall with the arches. We have 19-foot deep stalls. And right at the curb line is the wall, which means there's going to have to be wheel stops somewhere in every single parking stall. And my question is, and maybe even Katie or Stephanie might know the answer to this. Can the curb be moved back to become the wheel stop for protection of those columns? Also, the ones against the retaining wall. Right now, no wheel stops are shown, and it seems that they are absolutely mandatory, or people are going to be running right into that wall when they park. Could a curb be pulled back and used rather than all those wheel stops, maybe even leaving a spot for some vine pockets to work on that wall to get some landscaping that Michael was saying might be appropriate or help soften that wall up. Anybody have any thoughts on that?
That's a really good question. There is a provision in the code that does allow overhang, a certain amount of overhang as landscape to be counted as part of the parking stall. I would have to follow up and check with engineering on what their standard is, as well as what's in the code, because I don't know offhand.
Jen, you have any info?
It is possible. A typical parking stall would be 18 feet deep, and sometimes people do 6+2. So the 2 feet will be flat grassy area. So in that case, you have a little bit of more landscaping area. So that 2 feet is accommodates the overhang.
Yeah, I've even seen it as much as 30 inches to the wheel, but 2 feet is probably a standard. So
the real overhang is not 2 feet. No car has, very few cars has 2 feet front overhang. So,
well, when you get to the curve of the wheel, the curb comes almost to the rim, not to the rubber part of the wheel, because of the arc of the wheel and the height of the curb. But I think that should be looked into as a possibility, because something's going to have to be done along that wall so it's not damaged with people parking along there.
Maybe ballards. Yeah.
So as far as the site plan, that's the only comment I think that hasn't been covered. It sounds like we've gotten into, well, all these, I just lost all my pictures. Everybody still there?
Yeah, we can see you, Bart.
yeah,
Okay.
I'm here.
I've lost my picture, so I'm just going to go without a picture here. We've been talking about details that other people have done. We don't want to just do a cookie cutter and use details other people have done. But the Spanish Colonial Revival design guidelines put together by Lenny talk about proportions being the major concern. And I understand the detail in all of the columns, but it seems that it just accents the height of the tower with the columns on it. We had kind of the same situation on the in and out application, where we had an arched window, a tower, and they had this and then a recess where the sign was going to be. So I'm more inclined to, it's not a deal breaker, but I kind of favor the deeply recessed window and the flatter face to the tower. I couldn't find anywhere that called out this colored wainscot that's around the lower part of the building. Is that going to be a terracotta paver? Is it a cast concrete? Is it sandstone? Could the applicant?
Yeah, it'll be a stucco, an embedded stucco color. That'll be similar to that. We haven't picked out the exact color yet, but it'll be exactly similar to that that shade that we have on there.
I understand that, but is there what is it just going to be a painted line?
Essentially, yes. At this point, it's just a painted line.
So by way of background, that is, I believe, the application at Starbucks. Again, not that we're wanting to pull random bits from other projects, but
isn't there a belt line along that though? At Starbucks?
I could not say for sure as a planner because it wasn't my project, but as a customer who goes there, I think it's essentially a painted line, but I could be wrong.
Okay.
We would happily do a reveal there. We
Even
just saw it on
those, you know, foam shape along there, something to make it look like it's just not a paint on.
Could we could we do a 1/2 inch reveal along that that line?
If you're talking about a stucco screed, no.
Yeah, I mean, we were again directed to keep simplicity. The nature of this, the colonial revival architecture, you see that many times paint is used on a flat surface to differentiate areas. In this particular case, we have landscape around the building, so running something white all the way to the bottom kind of invites staining over the years. When you have rain, it splashes up.
We don't typically, the Spanish colonial revival we have around here, that's not a typical solution of just painting a different color. There's either a thicker reveal, or like you guys did on the Sheila Kuehl Family Wellness Center, you guys used looked like a sandstone maybe, or concrete wainscot with color on it. Or it could just be stucco, but I think there needs to be an architectural reason for that line to be there. And one that's typically used is just a belt mold.
We could just go back to white all the way down if you prefer.
No, I don't. I'm just not comfortable personally that just a painted line is truly a Spanish colonial revival solution to that. And we'll do more on that during discussion. What's your thought? This is for the architect on sheet A3.1. Proportions in Spanish colonial revival are stressed throughout any analysis of Spanish colonial revival. The windows on the second floor on elevation, south elevation on A3.1 are coming down to about 2 foot from the floor line on the interior. I was looking at, and they just seem awfully vertical. Any thought that you might be willing to move that sill up a little bit? A foot?
I guess if we do that, it's introducing yet another size window into the project.
Well, I would carry it around. I felt that it held true on both the east and south elevation. I'm asking the question because that's a very heavy element of the building, that whole second floor there. And we've got these little, what are they, 6x8s or whatever, these wood tails coming out looking like they're supporting it.
It's only a foot overhang. It's not very much.
It's a foot.
Yeah.
And it just, I don't know, it doesn't seem real. Had you thought about any using stucco corbels that might be a foot wide and then spaced a couple feet apart?
Yeah, we originally had them the same size as the first floor. As far as the windows were concerned on the second floor.
I'm talking about those little supports for the second floor.
Oh, the rafter tails.
Yeah, it just seems weak. And I wanted to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, we were trying to introduce some more detail on the freeway side, since that was an issue the last time around. That this that elevation needed more design. So I pulled the second floor out a foot or to incorporate and made the walls deeper on that, flared the windows, and then we went with a rafter tail design around.
Could we make them further apart and heavier?
Yeah, we probably did.
Yeah, we could probably make those little rafter tails a bit deeper, a bit heavier, and space them a bit wider. So, you know,
and I was thinking they could even be a stucco, foam typical corbels that are used all the time, with stucco over them to just show some beef that it's really holding something up.
Yeah, we could look into that. Absolutely. Yeah.
It would be your call. And then, let's see here. That's the only items I've got for questions for the applicant. Any other questions from Michael or Jen?
I don't have any questions now. No, thank you.
On the landscape design, have you guys considered our comments last time to add street trees to meet the street tree spacing requirement by the city? Katie, please confirm the space in the street tree spacing requirement. Is it at 35 feet or 40 or 30?
It's 30 feet on center.
Okay. It looks like we need a few more Mexican fern palms on El Camino Real. Did your landscape designer look at it?
They should have. It doesn't look like they have dimensions on those palms. I could check it in CAD real quick.
That one.
Well, it's so obvious, 30 feet of the sidewalk is about 10 feet wide. So 30 feet is 3 times that. And we, in front of the bio swale, we have, all the way to the left side of the drawing to the property line, there is none, right? So a driveway cut.
Yeah, the problem is that this is kind of compounding because we weren't going to replace the sidewalk originally. Then you guys asked for the sidewalk, and now that we're replacing the sidewalk, we're going to be adding street trees. So it didn't make it on the plan this time around. I think that the landscape architect ended up, keeping the existing instead of adding any new. But it's definitely something that we can look into.
Okay, and another thing I'd like to just to remind you that sidewalk needs to be accessible. And right now you're showing a 10 feet deep driveway cut, which you cannot have a wheelchair to go through it. So that side, the driveway cut needs to be reworked to allow the sidewalk to be ADA accessible. If you run out of space within that existing public right-of-way, then the city would ask you to give easement to the city to accommodate that ADA compatible sidewalk. I believe you can make it walk within that 10 feet, but if you can't, then there's a
Yeah.
sidewalk up and around the driveway cut.
Yeah, I believe that the civil has actually addressed that on their plans.
If you
The,
look at
the accessibility issue.
C01,
301. After A, I got a E. Or C01. Okay. Oh yeah. I see it.
But what we'll do is we'll transfer that to the architectural A01 as well.
Right. But make sure that relatively flat portion is 4 feet wide minimum. It doesn't look like it's 4 feet wide. That's an accessible path requirement for public.
yeah, that looks about 4 feet. We'll check it, but it
But
should be 4 feet.
we'll verify and make sure that's
Right.
Put a dimension on it.
Yeah, and another suggestion for your rendering on sheet 8 3.3, the bottom rendering. The purpose of that rendering is to show people how your building looks like from the freeway, right? And it would be to your advantage if you show a horizon line, which I believe is on top above your building. That way you show to the people, you're not blocking the horizon, you're not blocking the ocean, you're not breaking that ocean horizon.
absolutely. I'll put that in there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, any other questions? Then we will close the questioning of the applicant and staff and open up for public comment. Katie, do you have comment from the public?
I do have one comment. Let's see. This is from Tom Marshall. It says, as a resident of the neighborhood of this project, I support the proposed project. The structure in question has been a neighborhood blight for several years now. The area of El Camino Real from the intersection of Avenida Valencia southward is in dire need of redevelopment. Several abandoned or empty lots dot the area. As a member of the San Clemente Historical Society Board of Directors, it is my personal opinion that this structure is of little to no historical importance. Again, this is my personal opinion and not an official position of the board at this time. While I totally support the Society's campaign to have some classic examples of San Clemente's mid-century modern structures, I don't believe the Tommy's building would be a singular candidate for inclusion on this list. This is an issue which probably should have been considered a decade ago when the Historical Society first proposed identifying likely structures to be considered for historic preservation. To make this case at this late point of the project, I believe would be unfair to those involved. The project has been under city review for some time and needs to proceed. I have reviewed the plans and drawings for this with the project's owners, Shoreline Dental Studios, and I believe the proposed project will enhance the area. The building being proposed appears to be compatible with the Spanish colonial revival desire of the community. I have known the principals involved in this project for over a decade. They are members of a longtime San Clemente family and have shown sincere involvement and appreciation for our community throughout their lives. I urge the subcommittee to approve this project as a next step toward revitalizing this important area of San Clemente. Sincerely, Tom Marshall. That's all the public comment.
Thank you, Katie.
Katie, if I may add, we did actually receive one additional public comment during the span of this meeting. It's very short. Let me just go ahead and read it into the record. This comment comes from Wayne Eggleston. He says there needs to be a requirement and condition that once permission is granted to move forward, that Tommy sign be removed without delay. Thank you, Wayne Eggleston.
That would not be, I don't think we could make a recommendation, but nothing is in concrete until it goes through planning commission hearing. We're doing recommendations today. Very good.
But that's part of a proposal on the drawing, right? The sign to be removed.
That
Yes.
will be part of the conditional approval, absolutely. Okay, we will close public comment, open for discussion. I want to make sure today that we come to agreement on our recommendations to the applicants, so we don't kind of experience what we experienced last week at Planning Commission. So I don't want to leave too much latitude where we're going to be seeing things we didn't anticipate. So in discussion, would Michael or Jen like to start?
Yeah, I can start. In general, I think I would support this design to move to the Planning Commission. There are quite a few loose ends. I think the applicant can just tidy them up before going to the Planning Commission. That includes, for example, putting all the lighting fixtures, coordinating with the architecture drawing and a lighting fixture, exterior lighting fixtures. And make sure it meets the city requirement that lighting is shielded and there's no glare going out of the parcel and on the public right of way. Street tree, make sure the street tree are added to meet the street tree spacing requirement. A few other design requirements, body you just mentioned, and Commissioner Blackwell just mentioned. For the tower design, I would prefer, I would agree with Bart. I prefer that the cleaner look, the alternative look. The corner can be chamfered. That's all I think that's all I have. Adding the roof over the arcade, I would not demand it. I think the standalone wall connected with the main building with the trellis, with the Raptor tail or Raptor, they're okay. Anything else? Modify arcade, no. Simplify main tower, agree. Modify arcade to be a true covered arcade. I would say not to mandate it. Update the site lighting plan, yes. No, I don't have any major concern on that.
Okay. Let me ask the applicant then while we're doing this. Are you in agreement with those 4 items that Jen indicated? Lighting, add the street trees, the tower design, and not doing the roof cover over the arcade?
Yes, we are. And we'd also like to support the possibility of pulling the curb out from that arcade wall a little bit, shortening up the asphalted parking stalls in front of the building, but allowing the curb to act as the wheel stop so that the front of the car can overhang. So we would definitely like to do that too, if that's permissible.
Okay, very good.
I also want to encourage you to talk to your lighting design consultant again, because right now you're proposing the illuminance level on the parking lot way brighter than typical situation. So I leave it to you. But the bottom line is no glare, no reflection onto adjacent property and a public right of way.
Very good. We'll take care of that.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, Bart, I have a couple of comments.
Oh, absolutely. Please, Michael.
Yeah. You forgot to add to the list the apron, unless I missed it, wraparound, whether it be a relief or not. And I'm with you, Bart, on the coloration of that and not just that detail on, but actually having some purpose. And
I support it. I think it shouldn't be just painted over. It needs to be real material like stucco, impregnated color, or ideally with some trim in between these 2 stucco. Yeah.
And guys, how do you feel about the tile detail around the window? If we're going to simplify the corners with the chamfered edge on the tower, one of the alternatives was a tile inset. Very nice.
That was on Katie's presentation. Could you bring that up again, Katie, or have staff do that?
Tara, are you able to open my presentation one more time?
Yeah, it was alternative 2.
Slide 8.
Yeah, just give me 1 second.
Thank you.
I like the alternative design for the Raptor tail on the tower. That is more elaborate and a lot more expressive.
Agree. I agree with that.
Also.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, the middle one.
So the reveal has a decorative.
Just on the front.
Yeah, I see it.
Just to give you a quick idea of what we did here, we simplified. Obviously, took away the columns, but what I did was on the tiled one, I did a flare, the inside flares around the window, and then did a tile inset pattern. And then, of course, we did the 24-inch radius bull-nosed edges around the perimeter.
So that window opening is actually at a slight slope and not square.
And you were only proposing to do the one that faces El Camino Real?
No, we would do both.
Okay.
Well, the rendering shows just the one.
Yeah, this was a real quick thing that I sent to Katie, just to make sure that we had a couple other options to discuss.
But it would be both windows.
Yeah.
That actually is very nice.
So you will not have a surround, just the side of the flare opening, right?
That is correct.
But bring it out like at a 20 or 30 degree angle and.
That is correct, to match the flare that we have around the rest of the building.
Okay.
I don't know, guys. What do you think? I like it. I think
Okay.
it's really nice, elegant.
I'm neutral on that.
Yeah. So since
That means I
agree,
let the designer to do what they want.
let's see, you still have the floor, Michael.
Okay. Yeah, and just the palm issue. The Caltrans palm, Katie, I don't know if how aggressive our legal wants to be, but a well-worded letter to Caltrans citing public safety might be in order, because that is along the public right of the sidewalk right there. And those fronds, when they fall, they can do a lot of damage to people. And that is an unmaintained tree, and it's just unacceptable, really. But I'd love to see that thing get cleaned up, especially if the property owner is willing to take that on as a maintenance issue. That's a great offering right there, if we can get that to happen. And I think with all the comments the other design review subcommittee members have made, I think the project's
Oh, just another quick question to the applicant. The shoreline with that graphic, that's a logo, is it?
Yes, that's our logo.
Are you proposing any other signs on the site?
We haven't gotten to the point of a sign application, so we're not even proposing these yet.
Okay. Which
Yeah, they're just sort of a placeholder.
Okay.
Anything else, Michael?
No, that'll do it, Bart.
Okay.
Thanks.
Stephanie and Katie, let's go through this list of items. I'd like them reflected in the minutes, that the lighting design will be updated to be consistent with the city standards. The street trees will be added as per the city standard. The tower design will be without the columns, but have the tiled recess. The roof over the arcade that is referred to in the staff report would not be required. The applicant will investigate being able to move the curbs into the parking space to act as the wheel stops. There will be some kind of belt mold or relief at the color change along the wainscot of the building. The applicant will research and be guided by staff that stucco screeds and control joints for the stucco is not typically allowed in the architectural overlay zones or the gateways. So I want them to realize that now. And were you aware of that, Niall?
Yeah, I do understand that that's a very more traditional approach, is to not have stucco screeds separating areas, but just to allow the stucco to crack instead. I think that's...
Well, there are additives that minimize it, but stucco cracks. You're absolutely right. And there is a standard texture that the city requires for the architectural overlay zones for the stucco.
We'll adhere to that.
Very good. The rafter tails on the tower will be the three-dimensional shaped tails shown on Katie's presentation. More effort will be done by the city and applicant with Caltrans to see if there's an opportunity to maintain or enhance the Caltrans property. The easement will be a, what's the right wording here? A permanent easement, and the conditional use permit will be based on having that easement. The city attorney has done this hundreds of times, so it's a standard deal. The only other things I'd just like to throw out, and I probably should have done this during discussions with the applicant, but on A 3.1, the sills you're proposing along the freeway in the front and the side are just a flat wood 2x6, I believe, for the sills of the chamfered sills of the windows. Any thought of doing that in just stucco with a flat tile paver on top? Because they're gonna...
Actually, now that we're introducing tile on the front tower, yeah, I think that might be a good idea. Yeah.
And I think maintenance wise, because that darn freeway, dust, dirt, it's a tough side to maintain.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Wood's going to take a real beating there. So if Michael and Jen concur to that, I would recommend that.
Mark, can you repeat that?
If you look on sheet 3.1, A 3.1, the sills of all those windows are just a flat 2x6 laid in the opening and stained. And if they just did a stucco one and just used a tile paver on the top of it so the stucco's not gathering all the dirt, and at least when it rains, it'll wash off. It's a very nice detail. It adds some color and it's zero maintenance.
Oh, yeah, sure.
And then the only other one I had discussed was the corbels underneath that second floor. I'm not going to say no to the wood, but it seems like a little substantial stucco shaped stucco over foam corbel would probably be.
We'd like to propose keeping the wood, but using a much heavier section, a bit wider spaced.
That would be fine. If
I agree,
Michael
I
and
agree.
Jen agree.
Yes.
Michael? You have any thought on that?
Mute. Yes, I agree with that. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, Katie and Stephanie, do you have those items, do you think?
Definitely.
Okay, then I would say we are, I'll ask each person to concur, but I'm in agreement that if these items are agreed to by the applicant, that I'd like to see this move along to Planning Commission. Jen?
I support it.
Michael?
Yes, I'm on board with that. Yes.
Okay, congratulations and look forward to seeing you at commission level.
Thank you.
very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. We don't like to talk too much about a design on the planning commission, so just make sure you got all of them.
Yeah, no problem. We'll do.
Thank
And
you.
I think this is, if in new business or something, we can have a discussion amongst ourselves that the best way to address moving things along that may not be complete, and making sure that our position is understood. Okay, the next item is new business. Excuse me, old business. And do we have Jonathan yet? Or there he is. Okay. Is the design review subcommittee is reviewing a minor amendment to site plan permit 19203 Plaza by the Sea, 610628 Camino de los Mares. And Jonathan Light is presenting it.
Good evening, planning commissioners. I'll be presenting this modification, and I also do have Mr. Kyle Goodat on the line with us, representing Brixmor, the property owner of both Plaza by the Sea and Ocean View Plaza. This will be a quick one. I know that you are all familiar with this project. We reviewed this a few times before Planning Commission ultimately approved the project in May of 2020, one of our early Zoom Planning Commission meetings. So the site plan permit in this case was 19-203. It encompassed a variety of modifications to the Plaza by the Sea property, including a dual tenant drive-through building and some modifications to landscaping, etc. Today, we're just looking at the one element of the throughway in between Ocean View and Plaza by the Sea. The applicant is in process of submitting, they actually already have submitted construction documents to move this project along. And they are proposing some modifications in that throughway area that I believe even more closely conform to what Design Review and Planning Commission had been looking for in the beginning. So if we can go ahead and move into the next slide. Thank you, by the way, Tara, for your time. So again, the address of this property is 610 through 628 Camino de los Mares, for anyone who's not familiar with that. And the zoning is Community Commercial 4. It's within the Camino de los Mares focus area. And again, the construction plans have already been submitted. So let's move to the next slide, please. The slides here are really just going to reflect what was in your report. So just again, putting this in a format that the public and yourselves can look at while we're discussing. So figure 1 from the report indicated the prior approved connection area. On the right side of the screen, you'll see the Ocean View Plaza area. The top part of that screen would be where Trader Joe's building is. The bottom part is the parking in front of the Chase building. On the left side, you have the Plaza by the Sea proposal that was approved by the Planning Commission. And so what was approved, just as a very quick refresher, was the removal of a wall shown here with that dotted line and cutting back of some of the uneven elevation there so that we could have a smooth transition along the roadway in a slightly ramped up pedestrian walkway that would go from the Trader Joe's area around the corner to where we have a Cleaners and Rose's Donuts, etc. You'll notice one of the things on the left side of the screen in gray, that's the area of the trash enclosure, something that staff and Planning Commission indicated was not ideal, but within the reworking of this space seemed to be the best option. And I think that now the applicant has come up with something better than that. So let's move to the next slide, please. This just shows the image of what that would have looked like. Again, you see the trash enclosure up ahead. One of the things that I personally was not thrilled about with the location of that, even though it's an improvement on their current enclosure, is that it's situated in front of one of the arches that was kind of the entry into that covered walkway area in front of the building on the right. Let's go to the next figure. Thank you, Tara. Okay, so this is what is being proposed to supplant that prior plan. The slightly red tone color is what would be the new pedestrian walkway. You'll notice, again, as I just mentioned, that trash enclosure is being removed from that area completely. It's actually just off screen at the bottom center of this plan. There's already some existing trash enclosures by the Chase Bank building. And so this pathway actually will have to be ADA accessible all the way from these businesses to that trash enclosure. This is, I believe, the second or third iteration. Staff looked at a couple different versions before bringing this one forward, and so our Public Works group has looked at this as well. Another point of note is that these red walkways, along with being improved paver materials, again, to kind of enhance that Paseo feel between these buildings, that the north-south elements crossing that drive aisle would be slightly raised. And a two-part goal there: one, to improve the connectivity. From myself being an occasional shopper at that Trader Joe's, and I believe that most of you as well know that you kind of have to play Frogger across that area. And so this was one of the modifications that Brixmor made in their iterations before coming here, because I had asked for a way to really provide a more safe connection, and elevating that walkway across the drive aisle, I think, accomplishes two things. One, slows down traffic through this new area, and two, just again elevates or raises the pedestrians so they're just more visible to anyone that is driving. We did, you do see that there's the entire walkway has been moved to the south side of the drive aisle. So initially we had that on the north side. So that has been pulled to the south side. One of the discussions previously amongst Design Review and Planning Commission was, any potential impacts on Trader Joe's, since they have traditionally used this space for storage. Brixmor has already been in communication with that business, but again, another effect of this change in plans would be, allowing them some additional space. Although I'll let Kyle discuss any or respond to any questions about the interactions that there have been with Trader Joe's so far. I think that kind of wraps up what I have to discuss for now on this slide. If we can move to the next. And so finally, this isn't something that that Design Review needs to approve, but I just wanted to provide this as context just to show that Brixmor has continued to take into consideration the comments from staff and DRSD in the past to find ways to, again, improve the pedestrian experience in this area. So they've hired someone to put together some conceptual murals, and they're looking at a couple of options that would, help to disguise some of the elements that are in what was the service area, and still does function in that way. So there's still an electrical closet that services that entire building, but again, adding some art to not make the electric closet the main feature, but rather the art instead. So that's something that they are planning on incorporating as well. That wraps up the slides that I have. So I'll at this point turn it over to Kyle real quickly to see if he has any introductory comments on how they arrived at this plan, and go from there. Kyle, would you mind unmuting yourself? Great.
Yeah, thanks very much, Jonathan. First, as always, just want to say thanks very much to the collaborative efforts of the staff. Always a great group of people to work with, so we certainly appreciate that. And second of all, what really allowed us to make this modification was our internal legal department determined that we could move the trash can from, or actually we could service Plaza by the Sea with our trash cans at Ocean View Plaza. So we no longer needed to build a big trash structure dedicated to Plaza by the Sea. Removing that wall allows us to do that. So when we made that determination, we took this opportunity to enhance the path and better connect the two centers. So that's the reason we're back.
Thanks, Kyle. I think that just wraps up the staff presentation and comments from the applicant, and I'll turn it over to you, Commissioner Crandall. You're still on mute.
I believe we dropped 2 parking stalls. I'm not concerned about it, but that complies with their overparked, correct?
Correct. They did have a couple of parking stalls to play with, given, if you recall, we did a minor conditional use permit evaluating the different uses that were at this property. And so they did have a couple of parking stalls to work with.
Very good. Okay. And the only thing I was curious about, we've got a 24-foot wide aligned drive aisle, but all the islands don't necessarily align with that. I was just curious, is that because they're existing curbs, or what was the thought process there? This is on the ones like a Lucky Dry Cleaner. It's pulled back about 2 feet from the ones in front of the Magic Flooring line. Does Kyle have any comment on that? Or?
You know, I was just looking at that, Mr. Crandall. I don't see any reason we couldn't extend that. The only thing I can recall is that Public Works had some concerns with sightlines for backing out, but I don't think that's affected by that planner. So I think we could align them.
Yeah, I was just thinking that, you know, people like to drive in a straight line, and somebody's kind of
yeah
over that way, you know, whatever.
Yeah, understood.
Okay. That's my only comment on it. I think it's a great change getting that trash enclosure out of the public areas. So, Jen or Michael?
Yeah, just two questions there, minor. First of all, your legal department decided that it's doable. Are we going to have a deed restriction on Ocean View Plaza to allow that? I understand you own both of them now.
Let's see. We have a condition that requires connection between the two centers. So although not a deed or easement, we can never separate the two centers, even upon a sale. I believe that's the condition that was established with the drive-through building.
That addressed my answer my question. Another, I compliment you to make this improvement for pedestrian movement. The raised accessible pathway, how much do you raise it from the existing drive aisle? Looks like 6 inch.
I was going to say 6 inches, but we actually didn't do a section cut through there, but 6 inches is what I believe.
I'd like to see a section cut. 6 inch is pretty tall. The reason is that typically we have speed bumps, speed hump, speed cushion, speed table. They're not that high. It's going to interfere with some low clearance vehicle. Those speed humps or cushion, they're about 3 to 4 feet raised to avoid that issue. Just imagine a car have a typical wheelbase, both front and rear wheel will be on the drive aisle, and the middle portion, you take 6 inches off that clearance, sometime you're going to hit the bottom of those cars.
Yeah, understood. we have no issue with making them low. It was actually a suggestion from staff just to create a more safe pedestrian condition, which
Oh
we,
yeah, well,
we
I
agreed
like
with.
this idea.
Yeah.
So I rely on your civil engineer to make that detailed grading work. The accessible parking space there, I'm not sure how people get out of the car and get onto the accessible pathway. You have looks like you have a trunked dome in the middle of the pathway. It's not clear to me how they got onto this pathway, but I would say there's enough space, and I trust your engineer can make it technical details work.
Yeah, we actually did additional survey work when we started this design, and our our civil engineer is comfortable that he can make what we have drawn here work. So I'll make sure they're aware of those 2 comments.
Okay. Thank
Michael?
Yes. Mr. Wu, did you touch on accessibility and the raised walk aisle, and whether or not?
I spoke about the existing accessible parking space. Now it becomes a standard accessible parking space. But I think they have other very accessible somewhere else on the site, so that shouldn't be a problem. I talk about how to make this grading work, since we don't have a civil engineer drawing here. But I believe it's workable. And I also mentioned the height of the speed cushion or table, whatever we call it, seemed to be a little too high. An applicant agreed to work with a civil engineer to make it work.
Just wanted to be clear, I know this is design review subcommittee and definitely be a discussion at planning commission.
This is Michael. So you're clear on this. This is being handled as a minor change and will be going, staff brought this to us as a courtesy.
Okay, so it's not going back. Okay, I would just, thank you, Bart. I get carried away sometimes.
That's all right.
Progression. So just to be, that the applicant and staff would keep in mind the accessibility component per Commissioner Wu's comment isn't limited to vehicles, but wheelchairs, et cetera, need to be able to get across there. So just to make sure that that's covered in the design and that's done properly, so that we'll allow that. That aside, I like the improvement. It is consistent with some of the things that Design Review Subcommittee and Planning Commission had discussed previously. I like the improvement there. It's better use of space for sure. And Jonathan, when you mentioned we were losing stalls, it appeared to me that we were actually gaining parking at the area where the wall is being removed. I think we lost one during the last rev. Now we're actually gaining by relocating the trash enclosure, correct? You're on mute.
Unmute. There we go. Let me jump back into my plan sets real quick to confirm on that for you. Give me one second.
Thank you. I mean, if that's the case, that's a good thing. That's a good thing because that's just space that was just underutilized. So I believe that's what I looked at in the drawings.
I think you're right, Mr. Blackwell. I don't have the drawing set in front of me, but I believe you're right.
Yeah. Because when that wall opens up, certain uses are going to be even more popular. Parking right now is compromised at Trader Joe's, and it's a mess. So I think that's going to offer up more opportunity for ease of access. So the more parking you have, the better off you're going to be, I believe, in that part of the property.
Yeah, and no one's more motivated to accommodate customer parking than we are. So
I'll bet.
It's something we focus on.
Okay. And while you're looking that up, Jonathan, did you want to confirm anything, or are we accurate in our assumption there that the plans show additional parking?
Give me just 1 second. There is a bit of a trade-off that's occurring, so I'm check in on that real quick.
Okay.
Okay, so what I'm gathering, it looks to me like we have a net loss of 1 space, because on the right side, so there's a net gain on the left portion on Plaza by the Sea side. On Ocean View Plaza side, we lose a couple of stalls from the walkway that's now going across. So I think we gain 1 but lose 2. If that makes sense, gain 1 on one side, lose 2 on the other side, and so our net result is -1 from my quick observation.
I think that's what I figured out too.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. It's going to work better. Now, the other point of clarification, since you put it out there, Jonathan, I think it warrants some discussion. It would be reasonable. The murals. Let's talk a little more about that. Should the applicant decide to do some murals, is that going to go through any sort of public review, or is that handled at staff level?
Yeah, per the mural ordinance that Planning Commission approved, it would be an administrative process that the Planning Division would handle. So it's just an administrative process.
Okay. Well, it sure would be nice to see something on that back wall, Kyle, that faces the freeway. You have that big open canvas.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'll propose that to our folks.
Yeah. I also think about that, Jonathan, when I look at Target coming down La Plata. Maybe we can contact Weiland. He can give us a package deal.
I'll trade you a mural for some signage on that back wall. Just a joke. This is a joke.
Well, hey. Well, that's a group effort, really. We can talk about it. Well, that's great. And no new trees are being added?
Not yet, but we haven't really dug into the landscape design yet. But we have a full landscape plan we'll do for this.
Okay, great. Bart, that's all I have.
Very good. Thank you, Michael. And Jonathan, thank you very much for bringing this to us and keeping us informed and keeping us in the loop. That was very nice.
Absolutely. And then I just off comment, if I may, before I wrap up and take off. I don't know if anyone from this group was able to watch the last city council meeting, but Katie did a great job presenting in and out, and the council was really appreciative of the Planning Commission and Design Review's work on the in and out building. And then one of the later discussion points, we had people who had been bidding, on one of the city's properties, and all of them started clamoring to say, we'll do just as good as in and out. So you guys set a good benchmark through that process and project, and I just wanted to relay the compliments that came through that meeting.
Thank you, Jonathan. It's always appreciated. Okay, let's move this along then. And our next item is oral and written communications. Stephanie, do we have any oral or written communications?
No, we haven't received any other public comments unrelated to the items on the agenda.
Okay, then I will request a motion to adjourn. I want to compliment both Michael and Jen on a good meeting tonight.
Likewise, Bart.
Michael, would you like to offer a motion to adjourn?
I would, and I'd love to. I'm trying to pull up the meeting note for next time.
It would be adjourned to the February 10th, 2021 meeting.
Okay, I'd like to move that we adjourn the Design Review Subcommittee meeting to February 10th, 2021.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. We will take a vote. Jen?
Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
And I am aye also. So thank you, everyone. And thank you, Stephanie, for your hard work and having to sit through these meetings. And we will see you February 10th.
All right, everybody. Good night.
See everyone.